there's a lot of regulations involved in our food, and it's when we do talk about GMO and Santos.
The connection is that as it becomes financially impossible for the small farmer to compete against the GMOs, the regulations, their regulations, federal regulations against raw milk, even though we're not talking interstate commerce, and we could do a whole show on interstate commerce clause.
Yeah.
But the federal government rightfully doesn't have jurisdiction over local raw milk, but they send people to jail anyway.
Yeah. So I've heard. That's pretty sad. Have you heard that Santos and the whole GMO issue? There's a guy that works with him that also works in the Food and Drug Administration. So that's how all of these things can get through.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I don't follow the FDA that closely. But another aspect of GMOs, you remember in the news a couple of months ago, there was a concern about crops in Oregon being contaminated with GMO genes. And so countries like Japan temporarily stopped import of U.S. Agricultural products. Well, the problem is that I don't believe it's intentional, but it's certainly a side effect that may force the small farmers out of business, because you have GMO-grown crops in one field and natural crops in the other. Through natural pollination process, the natural crops are going to get contaminated with GMO genes. And the farmer won't be able to sell them, and Monsanto and the other companies will sue because they own the genes of the genetically modified food.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, you can't stop this cross-pollination. And so gradually, all of the crops, it'll be almost impossible to grow crops that don't have a trace of the GMO genes.
Wow. So the same thing happened too with gasoline and oil. Way back when I was younger, you could go to gas stations, and mom and pop stores, own these gas stations. And now it's all Shell or Exxon or the big corporations, and they were able to, through regulation, get those people out of business. Executive orders that were just written. I heard that during the bombing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but during the Boston bombing, while everybody was focused on that, Obama's other hand was being played, as he usually does, and he was writing an executive order. Did you hear about that?
There's been a lot of executive orders.
It's hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track. The most important thing to remember about executive orders is they're not law. An executive order applies only to the executive branch, or can be used to implement something which is a power granted by the Constitution to the executive branch, or as part of enforcement or implementation of a constitutional law enacted by Congress. Well, an awful lot of executive orders are blatantly unconstitutional on their face and have no force of law.
Right. But you get this, as we talked about last time you were here, this youth, Obama Youth Corps, AmeriCorps, he calls it. They're supposed to follow him. So if he gives an executive order and say, this one, Obama authorized government to seize farms, food processing plants, energy resources, transportation, skilled laborers during a national emergency.
Those are not new. They go all the way back to the Kennedy administration and have been renewed and modified since then. And what was the term that you used about these powers? What did you say? It grants power?
Authorizes government to seize farms, food, processing.
Well, you see, it doesn't. That's the point. It claims the power to do so without legitimate authority.
Right. And if he wasn't a revolutionist, I would maybe say, well, he's just kind of writing some things like Kennedy did. Kennedy never acted on some of his executive orders.
No, not at all.
Bill Ayers, his whole mantra has been to create a revolution and act and create an America that he wants to create.
Basically create chaos and organize the
Yeah.
aftermath along your own vision. But you don't need an executive order. Look what happened in Louisiana after Katrina. The police went around and started confiscating guns.
Right, but there must have been some organization behind that. That probably just didn't happen. That there was probably some teaching and instruction that created that atmosphere.
They were told to do that, but the instructions to illegally confiscate firearms after Katrina didn't come from the federal government. It came from the city government.
Oh, well, I don't doubt that because I don't think Bush would have had them do that. So
well, Karl Rove was having an appendectomy at the time, but the whole aspect of confiscating firearms in a crisis is really part of the philosophy that the government should have a monopoly on the use of force. Because when the government has a monopoly on the use of force, you're 99% on your way to tyranny. Because there's no way for the citizens to defend themselves. And I forget what founding father said, but if the citizens are armed, the government fears the citizens, which should be the case.
Yep. Now, there was another something signed by Obama. He promised to sign the Small Arms Treaty through the United Nations, which obviously isn't constitutional. So, I mean, we have some
well, I believe he has signed it, but that doesn't make it force of law. The UN treaty regarding small arms proliferation has been in the works for many, many years. In fact, under Bush, when they had one of these conferences, Bush sent a delegation to that conference and made Georgia Representative Bob Barr part of that delegation, who's a very strong Second Amendment advocate. The U.S. delegation completely disrupted the conference and there was no output. But Bush is not president anymore.
Yep, that's why they hated Bush. That's why I like Bush. They hated Bush.
And it sounds innocuous, but the truth of the matter is it basically is the basis for confiscation of firearms from civilian hands. It is blatantly unconstitutional, and it has to get by the Senate. I mean, the president signs it, and that doesn't make it a treaty. It just says that it's the intent to submit it to the Senate for ratification. I don't think it would get past the Senate.
Yeah, well,
thanks to the NRA and other groups.
Yep, well, we need to keep people informed, and people need to keep pressing their senators and Congress.
Well, even at the state level, Alabama has outlawed Agenda 21, and there are other states that are proceeding to outlaw Agenda 21.
Yeah, I'd like to see Oregon do that.
Yeah, in our dreams.
Yep. Well, I'm going to go on. We have to close, and I want to talk just for a minute about the New World Order Guidestones. Number 9, we are talking about Plank 9 of the Communist Manifesto, the New World Order 9, and then the Commandment 9. We'll be doing that in the next week or two. It says, prize truth, beauty, love, seek harmony with the infinite. And so prize truth. Whose truth? It's the New World Order's truth. And I hate to think what they mean by that.
That sounds like New Age psychobabble.
New Age psychobabble, yep. That's their truth, is New Age. In the Bible, what does it say about property rights and having the government seize control? Naboth's vineyard. This begins with Ahab wanting Naboth's vineyard, and he's upset. And so Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said to him, "Why is your spirit so sad that you can eat no bread?" And he said to her, "Because I spoke to Naboth and said to him, 'Give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it please you, I will give you another vineyard for it.' And he answered, 'I will not give you my vineyard,' because it was an inheritance that was passed down to him. And his wife, Jezebel, said to him, 'Do you now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread and let your heart be merry. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.'" And the point is she had him killed. So she thought that, her husband was in charge. He had the power, so he had the right to take the vineyard. And obviously, that's not right. And, I want to...
That has been occurring in this United States recently, almost literally, including people being killed.
Yep. Gee, we could do a show on that too, couldn't we? Huh? Well, here in the United States, we need to choose, God's way or government's way. Do we want to kick God out of our schools? Do we want to kick God out of our politics, out of our public square? Are we ready to let the government in and, kick God out? So, I'm afraid we've let the government in far too far.